Hi everyone and welcome to Social Sciences class, and this is your class 7. So I do hope that you are sitting with your social science textbook, and today's learning topic is going to be democracy. Now when I opened this textbook, I saw that it's a huge one. So what I've done is I've divided this topic of democracy into 3 parts. So this is going to be your first part of learning session, and we are going to complete it in the third part. So what exactly do you mean by democracy? So democracy, I'm not going to go into the terminology, but broadly speaking, democracy is where you are free. You are free to share your thoughts, you're free to express yourself, you're free to form your own government, you are free to tell that you don't like this governance, you are free to seek employment. Nobody has the right to take away your employment opportunities. You are free to practice the religion that you want to. Basically, it's free and free. So that's what democracy gives us. And the people who are living in a democratic government are really blessed, because as we are in the largest democracy, we do not realize the kind of rights and the kind of freedom that the government of India has provided us with. So people who are not living in a democracy, you need to really ask what democracy is all about. So let's continue. So this is your chapter number 13, and the pages that we are going to be doing today is 88 and 89. So you see this picture and you will see that democracy means your rights, democracy means your freedom, it means that you have a voice of your own, it means that you belong to a country and you're a citizen of that country. It also means that you are going to be a participant in the government that is formed. It also means that you are the one who are representing the entire constituency or your own rights and duties. But also remember, with democracy, when you have the rights, even your duties come in. And your duty, foremost duty as a citizen of any country, is that you have to vote. And you have to vote on your own reason, not because somebody is telling you. There is a media who's telling you to vote here, or there is a money which is coming in. Because remember, this democracy took a long time to come into the world. So let's start with how we were introduced and how we established these democratic institutions in the world. So democracy is a government which depends on the consent of the governed, which means if the people say that this is the person I want as my MLA or as my MP, this is the person I will get. If I say I do not vote to that person, he does not become my MLA. So it is a government which will always be dependent on you for yes, on you for no. Now the word democracy, this has come from a Greek language. So it's been divided into demos, that means the people, and kratia, that means power. So basically democracy means the power of people. So these are the two words which are together means power of the people. And remember, this power has been achieved by a generation of people around the world for you to now start enjoying. So here we go. So democracy is much more than a form of government. So it's not only that you form a government and that means democracy. It includes an idea. It is a social system that is aimed at general social welfare through complete development of human personality. So if I were to say that how can a democracy improve my personality? It can, because I can voice my thoughts. If I do not like a policy of a government, I can always say I do not like. This is an improvement. This brings in confidence in me that I can ask what is my right. If I see that in a newspaper the advertisement was not there for the job vacancy, how has he got a job if there was no advertisement? That is a right that a democratic institution gives me. So this improves my personality. Any policies that a government makes for you, it has to be socially beneficial for you. So I am the one as a citizen who's going to take the government to task if they do not listen to me. So that is how democracy is also a social power that has been given to all of us. It is also based on the principles of popular participation and public accountability. Popular vote, if you get the vote, you are there, but if I am casting a vote, I am the one who's participating in that democratic process. So it is based on the participation and public accountability. So whoever has been elected as my representative is accountable for his action towards me. If I say I am not happy with your work, I'm not going to elect you the next time. So accountability is there for the person. He's always going to be working for your benefit because he knows he is responsible to you. So that is what democracy means. It also means, as Abraham Lincoln has said, that the government is of the people, it is by the people and for the people. So it's the people who make the government. Because it's the people who are making the government has to abide by what is the general desire of the people. So of the people, for the people and by the people. All right. So in a democratic country, people govern themselves. They participate in the government either directly or indirectly. In a democratic government, adult citizens, that is, male and females both, elect their leaders, and those leaders who are elected directly participate in the government on behalf of the entire community. So what is happening here is that there is a constituency. The entire state or the entire country would be divided into different constituency, and there would be candidates from different political parties and they would be standing for elections. You give them the vote if your country allows you that right to vote. You vote for them because you have voted to them. They, when they win, form a government. They participate in the lawmaking. They legislate according to what you want, according to what they have promised you, and based on that promise, you had voted them. So that is how a democratic country would work. So it is always your participation as a citizen that makes the democracy works. So if you're not a good participant of the form of the democratic process, democracy is not going to be successful in your country. So it is you who makes it successful. In a democratic setup, there is no authority superior to the people of the country. Remember, 5 years you vote somebody and he tries to be bossy with you and you say, oh, I'm not going to vote you again. So he doesn't come back as your MLA, he doesn't come back as a minister. So that is why always the elected representative in a democratic form of government would always be looking after your needs. But for that, you have to vote wisely. So emergence of democracy in modern societies. Now remember, democracy did not come in overnight. It did not come even in 5 years or 10 years. It took centuries of struggle to get what we have, what we enjoy now in present 21st century. So the first emergence of democratic system, not a fully democratic system, but something to do with democracy, came with Bill of Rights. So this English Bill of Rights was an act that was signed into law in 1689, and the king and the queen who signed was William and Mary. So they were the co-rulers of England after the overthrow of King James. Now, what was this bill all about? This was all about granting constitutional and civil rights. So what is the constitutional right? That there are some fundamental rights given to you, right to equality, to freedom, to religious practices, that was given to you. Civil rights is when you are voting. So ultimately, instead of the monarch, instead of the king that was ruling, due to Bill of Rights, the Parliament started overruling the monarchy. It was the British Parliament which started making the rules, which started making the laws to help the general public. So the first and foremost emergence was the Bill of Rights that was granted to the British citizens. Then came the French Revolution. Now, this French Revolution was again something that was against the monarchy. So there was a queen who had never seen poverty, obviously, because she was the queen. And there was so much of poverty and unrest in the society that the people started revolting against the institution. And they overthrew the monarchy, they were all put to death, and then started their civic rights. And civic rights were implemented after the French Revolution. That was the result of the French Revolution, and that gave us freedom of speech, freedom to worship, freedom to be and associate anywhere you wanted to be, freedom for press, which is very, very important, and mostly ownership of land. So earlier, before the French Revolution, the land belonged to either the nobles or the king and the queen. So this was a big, big win for the farmers of France, that they got the ownership of their own land. So this was again a process in getting the democratic institutions at work. So the first was Bill of Rights and then the French Revolution. Now, after this, there were few countries who introduced the voting rights. Now, when the voting rights were introduced, not everybody, like now we have everybody who gets that voting right if you are 18 and above. So initially, voting rights were restricted to few. So the first category of people who got the voting rights were the rich people, as always. Then middle class was not given, women and slaves were not given. So it was only the rich people who were voting. So if you get the voting rights only for the rich people, they are going to be voting only for the rich people. So the same thing is going to be continued until and unless everyone gets the right to vote, irrespective of gender, caste, creed, or social strata. You cannot have a perfect democracy. That is why it was known as an imperfect democracy, because only the rich people were given the right to vote. Middle class, women, and slaves were denied that right. Then came, after the voting rights, there was a lot of struggle to get the voting rights for everyone. And when everyone, that means whether you are Christian, whether you are Hindu, whether you are any other religion, whether you are a Brahmin, whether you are a Banya, whether you are a woman, everybody when gets a right, whether you are a white person, whether you are a dark one or a brown or a black, when everyone gets to right, everyone participates in that democratic festival called elections, then it is called universal adult franchise. So the third point says when the right to vote is given to every adult in a country, it is called the universal adult franchise. So if somebody would ask you to write a short note, or what do you mean by universal adult franchise? So universal means everybody adult, everybody who's an adult. So all countries have different criterias to make a person adult. So in India we have adult as an 18. So universal adult franchise. Franchise is when you are voting. So that is what your universal adult franchise, and that is what we have now in the world. So when the right to vote is given to every adult in a country, it is also called the universal adult franchise. So you see old people, men, women, everybody with that voting card in their hands going to vote. So this is your universal adult franchise. All right, so then after the French Revolution and rule of law, then came right to equality. Now remember, um, earlier when the kings or the nobles and the queens were there was no right to equality. The peasants or the farmers were considered to be much, much inferior to those in rule. So in the 19th and the 20th century, there came a revolution which said that we have to have a society where everyone is equal. And that cannot be only politically that you are equal. Politically equal means you get the equal opportunities, but you have to be equal in economic sense and equal in social sense. Unfortunately, in most of the countries and in India also, we do not still have the equal rights for economics and social sphere. All of us are lagging behind in some sphere, but that was something that came about. This meant that all of them will have equal right to work and earn. They will be all treated as equals, and the distribution of wealth, that means the money, is going to be the same for everyone. Then there were few steps that establishes the concept of democracy. The first one, rule of law, which meant that the parliament or the body where you legislate is going to be making rule, where everybody is going to be in the of law. So everybody is going to be ruled by law. Second was that you have to be accountable and responsible. So once you take on the responsibility of being a minister, you have to be accountable to the public to say that yes, this is the responsibility that you gave me and I'm accountable and I will be doing my best. The next was adult franchise, as I said, that everyone gets the right to vote. And the last one to establish democracy was political equality that also extends to economic equality. So fortunately, we do have the political equality, but economic equality is yet to come. Now, what are the systems? Not every country in the world is democratic. So there are different systems in power today. So the first system that we have is dictatorship, where you do not have the voting rights, where you do not have a council of minister or a chief minister or a prime minister or a president. Instead, you have a king and he's a dictator, so there will be no elections held and he does what he wants to do. So that's called a dictatorship. And he is the one who's going to be solely responsible in making the decisions, although he is not responsible for his actions to the public. So it is not by the people, for the people, or of the people. So I have made these three people who are the dictators. The first one from Korea is the living dictator, the other two have died. So the dictators that we had in this world. The second type of government that we have is monarchy, where you have a king or the queen who rules, and the living example is the Britain queen, who has been ruling since a long time. So, but here the queen is a head of the state. She's not the one who's ruling in England. It is the parliament, again, the elected prime minister who rules. But somewhere in some countries, you do not have a system like UK. You do have a king who's ruling. Like for a long time, it was in Bhutan where the king was ruling. So that's a second system called monarchy. We also have an absolute monarch in Saudi, that's the one, and that's not a head which is where you find that he's not going to be making the rules and regulations. It's him who is in power. Then you have theocracy. Theocracy means where a religious person or a religious group of people come together and they form a government. So if you are a Christian and there are like-minded Christians and you form a government, it will be a theocratic government. So most of the time you do not have, except for Iran. I think Iran has a theocratic, yes. So Islamic Republic of Iran, that's a theocratic government. So they are ruled by Muslim priests. So that's called a theocracy. So we have monarchy, we have democracy, we have theocracy, and we also have dictatorship. So different forms of government in the world. So let's find out what all we have learned and what all have we done today. So first one is the word democracy, that has been derived from two Greek words. So what are those words? So the first one was demos and the second one was kratia. It means people's power. Then rule of people is known as democracy. That is what our learning topic today was. The concept which recognizes all citizens as equal in the eye of law. It was rule of law. That was the first thing that started that law should be binding for everyone and it should be an equal thing for all the citizens. The next one is the form of government where king or queen rule. That is your monarchy. So it could be a constitutional monarchy like England. It could be a monarch where it's only the king who's ruling. So this was the learning session. Let's go on and say what is the democracy in the words of Abraham Lincoln. I just explained it to you. I would appreciate if you have a notebook and you could just copy these questions and write your own answer. So I'll just go off from the screen so that you have time to go through it. Second was, what were the two revolutions that gave birth to the rule of law? So I'm giving you the first one, that was French Revolution. There's another one that you have to remind yourself and write about it. Then what do you mean by the universal adult franchise? So universal means everybody, adult, whoever is not a child, franchise means your voting rights. The next one, what were the 3 steps that established democracy? So you have to kind of start reading through those pages and give me the steps that could establish the kind of democracy that we are living in today's world. So remember, it took a long time to establish the democratic values in the society. And it's not that all over the world everybody is living under a democracy. So we are very fortunate enough to be living in a democratic country where we have the universal adult franchise. That means we can vote, and we also have the freedom to choose, the freedom to speak out, and the freedom to do what we want to do as a citizen of India. So thank you so much. Remember, we do also have 2 more parts to the same lesson. So go through, read through this and be ready for the next part. Thank you and bye-bye.